Welcome to Clothesline Theatre. We have been waiting for you to tune in to hear tales of Prince Edward Island, a place of history and some mystery. You may be surprised by the true stories that have been unearthed and brought to life by our radio dramas. We invite you to settle into a comfortable chair and let the voices and sounds trigger your imagination as you hear the following dramatic story.
When World War I was declared on August 3, 1914, the Canadian Army Medical Corps had 5 permanent nurses and 50 in the reserve. The government determined that 100 nurses were to be selected, trained, and prepared to leave Canada with the first overseas contingent on September 30th. There was no shortage of nurses seeking the positions. In the first 3 weeks alone, 1,100 applicants applied, 6 of whom were Prince Edward Islanders. Only one Islander would be selected in the person of Rena McLean, a native of Surrey, who was employed as the head nurse in the operating room of the Henry Hayward Memorial Hospital in Gardner, Massachusetts.
Listen up, fellow nurses. I hold in my hand my letter of acceptance into the Canadian Army Medical Corps.
You dark horse, Rena. You never even told us you were applying.
You can't be serious, Rena. Life is good in the Boston States. You have a perfect job and an engagement ring on your finger. Why would you leave that behind for a war in Europe?
Many reasons, Sarah. I feel a duty to my country and king and have compassion for the men who will need my skills as an operating nurse. Also, I have a sense of adventure. I'll get to see Europe before I settle down. And besides, they say the conflict will be over by Christmas.
It's amazing you were accepted, Rena. Apparently, every Canadian nurse out there has applied. Why do you think you were successful?
It's simple. Number 1, I have the qualifications. Number 2, I sent my application directly to Sir Sam Hughes, Minister of Militia and Defence, rather than the matron. And number 3, my father got me a personal letter from Sir Robert Borden, Prime Minister of Canada.
Rena McLean, affectionately called Bird by her family, was the daughter of John McLean of Surrey, PEI. He was a prominent merchant in the small eastern island town and co-owner of a 30-boat fishing fleet, 3 canning factories, and extensive real estate in the province. As a conservative supporter who later became a senator, he had influence with the government. As one of the first 100 nurses to be chosen to go abroad, Rena was known as a Mayflower. Nurses sent over at later dates throughout the war were labeled cauliflowers.
What about the engagement ring, Rena?
I'll send it home to Surrey for safekeeping.
That's not what I meant. Your trousseau will soon be out of fashion.
McLean reported to Valcartier, Quebec for a 10-day crash course on everything from how to read military orders to how to keep track of supplies, ranging from drugs to coal.
Good grief, Nurse McLean. They want us to know 41 orders and responsibilities before we even sail.
No rest for the weary, they say. And our bunks have no mattresses or blankets and are stacked 3 high, so no comfort either.
And the wind whips through this old building.
Rena's ship, the Franconia, set sail for England from Quebec in the dead of night. It was the flagship in the fleet of 32 transport ships carrying almost 32,000 Canadians that made up the first contingent. With trepidation, her parents stood watching on the shore.
This is the one time I can't keep you safe, my little bird, and it breaks my heart.
We buried a daughter in infancy and had a second taken by the sea. Oh, dear John, I don't think I could survive losing a third.
Rena was not long on the shores of England before her adventure began. In November, she, along with 34 other nursing sisters, were sent to France as part of the No. 2 Canadian Stationary Hospital to establish the first Canadian hospital in that country. They were the first Canadians in France in World War I, and for that honor, Rena was awarded the 1914 Star. Upon her arrival, she and the others began converting a luxury hotel into a hospital. Then, on the clear, cold night of December 4th, Rena had her first contact with wounded soldiers when 300 wounded British soldiers arrived.
Nursing Sister McLean, see to this soldier's feet. He can barely walk.
I've never seen anything like this before. What's wrong with them?
Trench foot. It is caused by prolonged immersion in cold water or mud. This war is the first time the medical field has seen such a condition.
I've been standing in water up to my waist for 5 days straight. Sorry to be a nuisance.
Dear Lord, you must be in pain. Let me tend your wounds and then give you a cup of soup and a cigarette.
Rena quickly comprehended her adventure would not be over by Christmas of 1914. She spent 1915 and 1916 nursing wounded soldiers in France and England under very difficult circumstances, until her father used his political influence to bring her home to Surrey for a short furlough. When she returned to Europe, she faced the most severe nursing challenges of the Great War at Salonika, Greece, where there were 250,000 military casualties. There she remained until a public outcry in Canada about the deplorable conditions under which the nurses were working in that place resulted in them being called back to England in the summer of 1917. There she served in a hospital until February 1918, when she was assigned to transport duty on hospital ships bringing the wounded and unfit back to Canada. In the winter and spring of 1918, she made 5 crossings of the North Atlantic between Liverpool and Halifax. Her parents would travel to Halifax to visit with her.
Dear Mommy and Daddy, I'm so happy and relieved to see you. How are my friends and family in PEI?
If we could only take you home with us.
I long so desperately to be in Surrey once again. It is hard to be so close and not be able to get there.
I did my best to have you sent home, but my influence with the government has waned.
Soon, Rena, you'll be able to come home. But in the meantime, I will pack you food for the soul and send it to England.
Yes, please. In my next box, can you put in a tin of cream sodas, George Washington coffee, if you have some, and sugar, and oh yes, McLaren's cheese. It would be such a treat and a break from English fare of black bread, rabbit, and horse meat.
I will do my best, Rena. We think of you all the time.
Thanks for taking me shopping for the flashlight, Daddy. It'll come in handy if we are torpedoed.
They may have thought they were pleasing me by giving you lighter duty, but in my opinion, it's far more dangerous. Promise me, Rena, this will be your last trip.
I promise, Daddy. When I get back to England, I'm going to request a transfer to France.
Rena waved goodbye to her parents and boarded the hospital ship, the Llandovery Castle, painted white with a green stripe and large red crosses on its sides, and sailed once again for Liverpool, England. On June 27, 1918, at 9:30 p.m., the ship was 116 miles off Fastnet Rock, Ireland. The lights on the vessel were fully ablaze. The passengers were going about their duties or preparing to retire for the night.
Dear God, we must have been hit.
Oh no! What should we do? All the lights are out!
I have my flashlight. Let's get up on deck quickly now. Grab your cloak and follow me. As soon as we are on deck, get to the nearest lifeboat station and get a lifebelt on.
Do you think we could be sinking? Oh, this could be it for us.
We haven't survived this far to go now. Move.
Calling the engine room. Calling the engine room. Someone answer. Calling the engine room.
MacDonald, we need to stop and reverse engines. Get down to the engine room and find out what's going on, then report back.
Yes, Captain Sylvester.
Quickly, men. Everyone else, maintain your places.
Captain, they're all dead in the engine room. The number 4 hull is completely blown apart.
We can't remain afloat with that damage. Prepare to abandon ship.
Lieutenant Colonel MacDonald, officer in charge of the hospital unit, professionally paraded his personnel to various boat stations. The extreme slope of the sinking ship's deck made it difficult to launch the lifeboats.
Everyone, stay calm. You know the drill. Sergeant Knight, you are in charge of lifeboat number 5.
Yes, sir. Everyone load in orderly fashion. No pushing or shoving. There's room for everyone. We'll have 14 nurses and 8 crew members.
Sister McLean, I didn't have time to get my uniform on. I don't want to die in my nightgown.
It will be all right. Stay composed and quiet, or Matron Fraser will be after you.
Lifeboat number 5 was loaded quickly, but there was difficulty lowering it to the surface of the choppy water due to the forward motion and extreme list of the Llandovery Castle. The lifeboat kept crashing into the side of the ship.
Use the oars to push us away from the ship.
The pressure snapped them like popsicle sticks.
Once the lifeboat was finally lowered, the crew had difficulty freeing the ropes that connected it to the ship and broke 2 axes in the process. Every moment seemed an eternity. Finally, the ropes were freed, but a new problem had to be confronted. They had no oars to row away from the sinking ship.
We're drifting towards the stern. We can't steer away without the oars.
Silence descended. The nurses and the crew knew disaster was coming. It was Matron Fraser who put everyone's thoughts into words.
Sergeant, do you think that there is any hope for us?
No.
His final, despairing word had barely left Knight's lips before the poop deck of the ship broke off, and Lifeboat 5 was sucked into the vacuum, throwing the nurses into the water, pulling them beneath the icy surface. Sadly, they never came up for air. Only Sergeant Knight surfaced 3 times, and on the 3rd time managed to grab onto debris. Help was at hand for him.
Those in the lifeboats are to pull alongside those floating in the water and take them aboard. Unbelievable! Those shots are coming from the submarine that sunk us.
You have American flying officers on board.
We were a hospital ship. You could tell from the lights and the markings.
No. That was a cover. If not American flying officers, then you had ammunitions aboard.
We were a hospital ship, and you have committed a heinous crime. Now let me collect my survivors.
It seems we have made a mistake. Ran and shrink the lifeboats to hide our crime.
Only one lifeboat, carrying 24 survivors, managed to get away from the German submarine. Those on board were rescued 2 days later off the Irish coast. The sinking resulted in the loss of 234 lives, and all but 7 of the 97 members of the medical unit died, among them nursing Sister Rena McLean. A naval convoy later ran across the nurses' corpses floating in the water. Their white aprons had dried out in the sun and were blown up by the wind like little sails. The closest ship was unable to slow down or break formation to pick up the bodies for fear of submarine attack. 11 days following the sinking, Rena McLean's family received word their beloved bird was presumed dead.
Oh, my little bird, how we shall mourn her.
The sea claims again.
Nursing Sister Rena McLean was awarded several medals, and her mother received the Silver Cross Medal with medallion and scroll. Today, a plaque and garden at Government House in Charlottetown mark the area where the Soldiers' Convalescent Hospital, named for her in 1919, once stood. A memorial stone stands for her in the Surrey West Cemetery, and a plaque in her honor is found in the Radiology Department of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Charlottetown. Rena McLean's name also appears on the Five Sisters Memorial window at York Minster Cathedral. A plaque in her honor hangs in the library of Mount Allison University, and her name is on a memorial in Point Pleasant Park in Halifax for soldiers lost at sea with no known grave. Her name also appears in the Book of Remembrance in the Memorial Chamber of the Parliament Buildings in Ottawa. Nursing Sister Rena McLean, Lost at Sea. Presented by Wyatt Heritage Properties Incorporated. Narrator, Stuart Smith. Rena McLean, Patty Arsenault. Nurse 1, Michelle Askew. Nurse 2, Catherine Dixon. Nurse 3, Susan Rogers. Nurse 4, Jennifer Beck. Mr. McLean, Stephen Hurst. Mrs. McLean, Janet Rose Hurst. Matron, Janet Trousdale. Soldier, Mitchell Fraser. Ship Nurse, Sarah McIntyre. Captain Sylvester, Howard Goody. Barker, Roger Ahern. MacDonald, Jim Dixon. Sergeant Knight, Spencer Phillips. Crewman 1, Jordan Stetson. Crewman 2, Mark Phillips. Matron Fraser, Charmaine Comeau. Captain Patzig, Wayne Wright. Introduction, Lowell Eustis. Musician, Christine Anderson Gallant. Foley's, Alexandra Gallant, Krista Bryson, Nathan Wiley. Recording engineer, Peter Gallant. Scripts written by Marlene Campbell. Based on research by Catherine Dewar for her book titled Those Splendid Girls, Prince Edward Island Nurses in the Great War. Any errors in historical accuracy in the composition of the script are the responsibility of Wyatt Heritage Properties. This project has been supported by the Building Communities through Arts and Heritage Program of the Department of Canadian Heritage.